In this video, we're going to talk about the number one mistake coaches make in marketing. Now, there's so much focus on and dependency on processes and how-tos and when should I's and how should I's and how much should I's and all of that stuff. But if you don't get this one piece, none of that matters. And this actually is the reason that most coaches struggle or eventually fail. So you can't miss this piece. So what's the number one mistake that most coaches make that causes almost everybody who wants to be a coach to fail? There's probably a lot of things that we can make a case for as the number one mistake. A lot of things seem to be tied for first. But one of them that is relevant from a time perspective for us, because we keep getting into these conversations, and in my experience over the last 10 plus years, seeing why coaches fail and why coaches succeed is probably the most common one, is the unwillingness to pick a single target. The unwillingness to identify a target client, right? In our community, we call this person your seeker. And I had this realization, I don't remember how long ago it was. It was quite a while ago, as it related to my own business, right? I was trying to do this, identify your target client, and I just felt a lot of resistance. And for whatever reason, I just didn't want to answer these questions of whatever the exercise was that I was doing. And I had this moment where I shifted the perspective to where instead of seeing the person that I was going after, right? Like even the idea of a target, right? I had this idea like I was pulling the bow and arrow back and I was going to shoot somebody, right? Okay, where are they? I'm going to get them. The idea that I'm putting targets on people and I'm chasing them down or, trying to lasso them and rope them, and it just didn't feel good, right?
Really?
Right. So I felt all this resistance, and then I just had this shift where I saw myself through their eyes rather than seeing them through my eyes.
Wow.
So instead of seeing them as my target, I saw me as their target. I saw me as the one they were searching for, right? And I'm using a plural they right now because that's how it first came to me. What if people are out there seeking me? And then as I had this shift and I saw a bunch of people that were now coming after me, I just kind of intuitively honed in to an individual person, right? In that crowd, there's an individual person. There's a bunch of individuals. And that one person is actually already seeking what I have. And it was such a profound shift for me because the energy completely shifted. Now it was like somebody was looking for this information that I have and I was keeping it from them. Right? I was playing keep away.
Yeah.
with the knowledge that I have, the lessons that I've learned. And that didn't sit well with me. And so ever since then, as I teach it, I always talk about your seeker. Who's that person that's currently not going to be seeking what you are eventually going to have? Currently seeking, like literally right now, they're typing into Google a question that you could answer. And then the question is, for all of us, how long are we going to withhold the answer from that person that's typing in the question?
Jeez.
And every time I think about it, every time I teach it, people have a similar response to what you just said. It's just like breathtaking, right? Because then it doesn't feel good for us to not get in motion.
Right.
Because everything now is switched.
Yeah.
And what I've also found is that most people are not afraid of answering questions. People are afraid of speaking. They're afraid of teaching sometimes. They're afraid of selling. They're afraid of the doing.
Right.
But I've never found anybody that's afraid of serving. I've never found anybody that's afraid of answering questions that are in their wheelhouse, right?
Sure.
In the lessons that they've learned. I had this experience years ago. I was doing this training in a crowded restaurant. I took over this restaurant and did a coach's training, and there was like 60 people there. It was tough to hear, but I was talking about this one. I had just actually had this shift right before I did this training.
Oh, cool.
And we were talking about what causes us to be afraid. And there was a woman in the audience. She raised her hand and she just said, I don't know how to get my message out there. I don't know what platforms to use. I don't know if I should do this or if I should do that. And her energy was just like a lot of us are when we're thinking about our fears. It was just like mousy, just like small, like certainly self-deprecating kind of energy, because she was in the state of being afraid and in the state of uncertainty. And so I brought her up to the front of the room and I asked her what she wants to teach, like what's the area of expertise. And she said that she wants to teach teachers how to be more impactful in the classroom, how to have better discipline in the classroom, et cetera, because that was her area of expertise. She was a classroom teacher. So I said, is anybody in the audience a teacher? And there were 3 people that raised their hand. And I asked one woman if she has any questions for this person up at the front of the stage. And the woman asked some question. I think it was around, like, I don't know what to do when kids are just misbehaving. Right? I wish I had a thing that I could go to all the time to deal with those misbehaving kids. And I went to ask the woman who I'd brought up to the front of the room to answer the question, but I didn't have to even ask her to answer the question. It was one of the coolest things. She literally stepped forward. It was like she got in front of me and she adopted this body stance. Because when she was up there at first, she was in that state of, I don't know what I'm doing and I'm afraid and why I'm up here. And when this woman in the audience asked the question, she literally stepped forward. And it was like she adopted this superhero kind of stance. Like her chest went out and her chin went up. And literally she stood in this like pyramid of strength. Her feet were shoulder width apart. And she just answered with so much certainty.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the exact details, but she's like, what I found is you need to do this, and then you need to do this, and then you need to do this. And just gave this powerful response for like 90 seconds. And as soon as she was done, then she stepped backwards again and just went right back into that small kind of energy.
Yeah.
And I looked at the crowd and I was like, did you just see that? I mean, none of that was pre-planned, nor did I think it was I wasn't hoping for that to happen. It was a surprise to me even. But what I really got in that moment is how this particular woman, and I think this is true for most of us, literally stepped forward into this place of powerful service. When just before that, she's like, I don't know what to do. I can't answer any questions. I don't know what to teach them. That was one of the things, is I don't know what to teach them. And then that's why I asked the question, well, what do they want to learn?
That right there.
And as soon as they, in this case, this one woman said, this is what I want to learn, then her embodied wisdom and confidence and certainty just showed up. But when we stay in this place of what am I going to teach or who am I going to go after, it puts us in this state of uncertainty that's just not going to bring the best out of us. It's not going to bring our A game, so to speak. It's not going to bring our power. It's not going to bring this state of confidence and certainty. It was just one of the coolest things that I'd ever seen, because it was like this physical transformation.
Yeah.
And in that moment, she just showed up to serve and then like sat back down. And that's how so many of us dance between what we are capable of doing but don't give ourselves the ability to, because we're stuck in what if I can't, or I don't know what to say, or what if they don't show, just all this doubt and worry. So when I said, what do they want to learn, you reacted. What was that about?
Because I know for myself, and a lot of the people that we talk to are so focused on what the right thing to teach is. What's the thing I should be teaching? Who's the person or people that I should be serving? What's my niche? Who's my niche? What am I supposed to be doing? And in that space, there's so much fear and hesitation, because I think because we care so much, because I do want to help. I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to mess up and then miss the people that I'm supposed to miss. And it's so...
Miss the people that you're supposed to help.
Serve, yeah. And it's shocking to me that we don't, in that space, even consider just asking them.
Truly, like some people go, oh, you can do that?
Yeah, just ask them. Ask them. I mean, I think about it like food, right? So instead of cooking the thing that you are wanting to cook and you have guests coming over to your house, just ask, what do they want to eat? Make that.
We're trying to predict what they might want to eat.
Yeah.
And fix that and hope they like it.
Yeah. And then not cook anything because you're scared you're going to make the wrong thing and then they're not going to like it and they're not going to enjoy it. Just ask them.
I imagine what you just said and the way you said is going to land really hard for a lot of people. And I think we just miss and or dismiss anything that's that simple. Mm-hmm. It can't be that simple. Like, I just ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can ask them. But the only way to get the level of clarity is to move from general to specific. Because if you ask, what are all these people wanting to know? You can't have specifics with more than one person. Mm-hmm. You can't have the level, like the one lady asking the question, I want to know this.
Oh, I got this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you think some teachers want this and some teachers want this and some teachers want this and I don't know if they want this, there's a level of specificity that's missing that actually draws out the server or the teacher inside of us. But that can't happen with a group of people.
No.
So my experience, both personally as well as with all kinds of coaches, has only like bore this out nearly 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Now, is it possible that somebody could succeed without one individual niche or focusing on one individual seeker? Yes, but the people that we see that don't seem to have an individual seeker are usually the people that have been at it for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't understand is that those people did start
right
with an individual focus.
Right.
Tony Robbins, if I remember the story, started with a bold challenge, a bold declaration. Once he got into NLP and understood the power of the mind, he essentially said some version of, and I might get some of these details wrong, but some version of, if you've been in therapy trying to heal a certain thing, I think it might have been PTSD or some specific thing.
Yeah.
I will fix you, whatever words he used, in 60 minutes or less. Something like that. It was like this bold thing. And then he got in motion. He learned a bunch of stuff. And then at some point in time, I don't know how long, he ended up doing, his infomercials, and then he became who he is now. A lot of people follow Lisa Nichols. Same thing. Lisa Nichols started out with helping troubled teens. That was it. And then she started to expand, and she got picked up in a group of really powerful transformational people and ended up being on The Secret, and she exploded. And now, people see her with helping a lot of people, but she started with an individual person.
So did
Jack
you.
Canfield. I did too. Jack Canfield started with helping teachers spread self-esteem in the classroom. I think that might have been the title of his very first book.
Mm-hmm.
I actually started out with something that I didn't ever complete.
That part, though,
Even
that's
take
important.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I started out wanting to help athletes. The very first, why do you laugh?
Because it's what you said, because you never did anything with it.
I thought you were going to talk about my career.
Not on camera.
Okay, thank you. Wonder Twins, what is that thing?
Brain synapses
Brain
activate.
synapses, okay.
You may touch
Form
your nose.
of water confidence. I started out wanting to help athletes, and the very first event I did was called How to Maximize Your Athletic Ability, and that allowed me to create the curriculum. It was a very clear focus, and I know who I was going after. So I went after athletes. I went after high school and college athletes specifically, and I wanted to teach them visualization. I wanted to teach them how to set goals and all the things that I wish I would have known at that age. So I did have a very clear person in mind. I ended up doing this event, and I mean, the event was great for my embodied ability at the time, but I didn't do anything beyond that. And that event was something that cost thousands of dollars. I mean, I don't know how much money into marketing and hired people to film the event and hired somebody to help me put it together and hired a coach. The event cost a lot of money. So if I look at the event itself, was it a success? Not in the metrics of finances or anything tangible, but it got me emotion. And because I had this specificity, this is part of the story that still blows me away. The event that's called How to Maximize Your Athletic Ability attracted a bunch of Mary Kay ladies. So I had this woman call me and say, can we come to your event? And my first reaction was, why would you come to How to Maximize Your Athletic Ability? But I knew I was paying a lot of money to record it, so I didn't want a bunch of empty seats. That's literally why I told them they can come. So I said, okay, actually, yes, bring anybody that you want, because I wanted the illusion of a full room as much as possible. And so they showed up, and they brought like 25 women showed up at How to Maximize Your Athletic Ability. And I told them from the get-go, I'm not going to be talking to you. Like, I'm not going to even try to include you. This is for athletes. But they came up to me afterwards and they said, you know, that stuff you were talking about, it actually applies to us too. I didn't try at all to include them. I was actually like trying to exclude them. If you take a look, it was like, hey, remember us? We got 25 of us here. No effort whatsoever to include them from a detail perspective, but the stuff I was talking about applied to them. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of us misunderstand, is that when you lock onto a single person and then go deep inside the humanity of that single person, that's actually a better way to attract other people that don't fit that profile, because the depth at which you focus and teach to or speak to is what applies to other people in different circumstances. Right. So these Mary Kay ladies came up to me, and what that means, if you're not familiar, is people in the company Mary Kay, they sell cosmetics. It's in almost entirely a female organization, has nothing to do with athletics. These are women that are home-based business owners selling cosmetics and skincare, things I had zero interest in whatsoever. Like, you talk about the opposite end of the spectrum. But because I was diving deep with specifics, they recognized this applies to our details as well. And that's what a lot of people misunderstand. Yeah. You know, to what you were saying earlier, I can help everybody and I just want to speak to everybody. And one of the classic philosophies in this conversation, which I think is absolutely true, is that if you speak to everybody, you'll reach nobody. Mm-hmm. Because the nature of the magnet inside the conversation is just diluted. Mm-hmm. If I have to appeal to you and him and her and them and this person over here, if I have to try to appeal to all of you, I have to, by nature, rise up out of the specifics into the vague and into the general so that I can try to capture all of you. And the nature of human connection is such that the more vague I get, the less attractive my words are. Because I'm not speaking with specifics.
Right.
But when we use specific details, that's when people get engaged. Even if the details don't match whatsoever. That's the lesson that I think most people don't intellectually comprehend, therefore they don't want to do it.
Right.
Or they think that it works for everybody else, but I'm special.
Right.
Right? I'm special. Yeah, I get it for all of you. And some people even teach it. But I'm special, and my thing actually truly does work for everybody. But one of the reasons that I am so passionate about this is because after this moment, so let me tell a little bit more of that story. So the Mary Kay ladies came up to me afterwards and said, this stuff really applies to us too. Will you come teach us? And, I'm just a few months away from the story I told in the other video. Like, if I needed a coach, it wouldn't be a woman, right? So I am not at this moment in my life interested in being coached by or coaching women, right? That's not the path that my ego wanted to be on. And I don't know anything about what it is that they do. I had no resonance whatsoever. And so I actually told them, no, I'm not interested in that. And they kept calling or sending emails. And eventually I said yes. Several months later, I said yes. And I went to one of their events and I just fell in love with the energy. I fell in love with people that want more out of their life. It didn't matter what they were selling. They just wanted the growth, the product wasn't as important as the process of I want more. And I just loved that energy, like people that really truly wanted it. So from that moment forward, and for the next 18 months or so, I focused only on Mary Kay women, and specifically a particular woman at a particular level of the company.
Right.
She became my seeker. Yeah. At the time, I didn't have the awareness of seeker, so I wouldn't have used that word, but that's actually what happened. And so I studied her. I asked other people about her. I tried to understand her mind. Again, this is beyond or before my ability to articulate it, but that's what informed everything that I teach now. And one of the things that I wholeheartedly believe is that your most valuable asset in your business is not your accomplishment. It's not your skill set. It's not any of the things that most people think it is or most people are trying to improve. It's the perspective of your seeker. If you know what your seeker wants, if you know what they're afraid of, if you know what they've tried in the past that hasn't worked, if you know what they've tried in the past that has worked, if you know who they trust, if you know who they don't trust, and you know why, you know what websites they're on, if you understand the mind of your seeker, they will write your entire business plan. They will tell you what products to sell them. They'll tell you what prices to put on those products. They'll tell you how to sell to them. They'll tell you everything. But most coaches don't spend the time, the effort, the energy, or they're just not aware of how important it is to get into the perspective of your seeker. So for the next 18 months, I only served this one particular woman. And after about 5, 6, 7 months, it clicked. And then it exploded. And then I learned where these people are. People being just a collection of that individual person.
Right.
And specifically, there was a particular event where like 10,000 of my seekers were going to be. And that event is what absolutely exploded my business. From that January to the following December, it took a few months for it to take hold. From April to December of 2007, we generated nearly $300,000. And if you include the few months ahead of time as all this was ramping up, it was over $300,000. But it was because I spent all of those months really understanding this person. And it was as if as soon as I deserved it, they showed up. As soon as I deserved it, because I studied her for months and months and months, and then I had the ability to serve her, then they showed up. And then what happened? And this is why I'm so passionate about this topic. At the beginning of 2008, my ego took over again. And I said, look at what we just did. We just did almost $300,000. By the way, we have a whole video where I break down the details of that $300,000 journey. So we'll put a card up there. We'll put a link in the description if you want the details of that. So there's a lot of lessons to learn from that journey. My ego takes over and goes, I think we can make $1 million. And I started looking at other coaches or speakers that I thought were making $1 million or more. And I found one of those templates, one of those one-size-fits-all approaches. And I remember bringing my team at the time, there's like 5 of them, into my house. And I remember getting the flip chart out and painting the vision for them. Like, this is the $1 million year, and we're going to do this just like so-and-so does. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And everything fell apart. A few months later, when I tried to execute that plan, nobody was showing up at my events. I had to cancel a bunch of events. I mean, I was losing thousands and thousands of dollars every month because I took my focus off of my seeker. And even when I went back to those same people that had hired me before or showed up at my events before, when I took the specificity that they cared about off of them, they didn't show up anymore. They weren't interested in this vague message. And these are people that already knew me. These are people that had already hired me. Like, these are warm, the warmest of warm leads. Some of them were literally still clients of mine. And they're like, no, I'm not interested in that. And that's what caused my entire business to completely fall apart. And a short time after that, I ended up filing bankruptcy. So I went from this crazy ascension, massive growth, multiple 6 figures, to bankruptcy. And the thing I did at the top of the mountain that caused me to fall all the way down is I removed the specificity. I removed the seeker and got general. And I think, looking back, I didn't deserve the business anymore. I didn't deserve their loyalty, or I didn't deserve their following. I didn't deserve their money. I didn't deserve them as clients, because I disrespected them by not honoring, to some degree, what I had built and what I had created for them. And then I just made everything general. The interesting thing is, while I was only focused on Mary Kay ladies, I was still getting plenty of clients that weren't in Mary Kay.
Right.
It's that specificity, right? I always like to think of a garden hose. You know, if you have a garden hose and you got one of those nozzles and you can, change the settings on it, the way that a lot of people want to market is that soft, like, spray setting, right? And it throws the water out, and so it kind of gives the illusion that you're going to be able to cover a lot more ground, but the water comes out with a lot less force because it's diluted.
Right.
The pressure is diluted, and so the water comes out, but it like barely even gets stuff wet, right? Whereas if you change the nozzle to that, like, laser spray, it seems like you're only focusing on that one thing, but there's some kind of power in that. And then what happens is if it hits a wall or something, then it splashes out. Whereas if you try to use the soft focus of this general water
Mist.
it's like a mist. That's a great word. Not a whole lot is going to get accomplished.
Right.
And that's a really powerful analogy for us to apply to our marketing, but people hate it.
I hated it for sure.
I still hate it. And I teach it. And even after everything I just said, if you sit me down and make me answer questions about an individual person, it's still not fun.
Yeah. I remember you resisted when we did it for the business. I had to like, hey, can we do this exercise? Yeah. I don't know that I love the process, but I know the power of it. And it's for that reason that I get excited about it now, because I understand the statement that you made, that the most valuable asset is your seekers, not seekers, KS, K apostrophe S, the
R.
perspective seek. Oh,
Right. R apostrophe
R
S
apostrophe
versus
Seek.
S apostrophe. Right.
Yeah.
Singular versus plural.
Singular, the
Yeah,
singular
I'm glad
perspective.
you made that distinction.
Yeah, that phrase is, I mean, it's like emblazoned, if that's right, on my brain. Like I remember that because the most valuable asset in my business actually has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. That's powerful, because the reason that so many people lack confidence is because they're trying to find their confidence and source it from their own wisdom or their own ability to answer questions. Yeah, that's a really powerful way to put it. And I think that's why, that being people seeing it through needing to have the right answers, that's why so many people resist this.
Yeah.
Because the questions that are involved in the exercise are specific questions. Like, how many kids does your seeker have? Where do they live? How old are they? And it's frustrating to the ego that also always wants to know the right answer.
That's right.
To not be able to answer the questions. But what's really important for us to understand is it's not about getting the questions right. It's about getting the questions clear enough to get in motion. And the other thing that vagueness does for almost everybody is it keeps us stuck. I mean, think of the state of overwhelm.
Sure.
Overwhelm is the state of having so many ideas, not knowing what to do. I don't know if I should do this, if I should do this, if I should do this. There's a lot of vagueness in overwhelm. It's that misty kind of all over the place. Whereas the specificity actually causes us to want to serve. It causes us to want to get in motion. And most of us are going to get up when we've been knocked down to serve a single person than we will to serve a market or to make money or anything other than service for a single person. But it takes this faith that what we've been talking about is actually true. And a lot of times with our clients, we'll say, prove us wrong. Prove me wrong before you decide that you're going to be the one that breaks the mold. Now, one of the things I started to say a while ago, so I want to close this loop, is that it is technically possible for somebody to not have an individual focus on a seeker and still create a business and create success. But what it takes is a level of certainty that most people don't have without the individual seeker. Or it takes an overwhelming amount of marketing that most people won't do without the individual focus on the seeker. So is it possible? Yes. And almost nobody will do the things that make it possible. Unless they have the individual focus. But I don't know, there's got to be something about us that wants to be the first, or we want to break the mold, or we want to be the exception. And virtually everybody that I can think of, that I'm aware of, that was fumbling, struggling, not doing, the activities, and then had enough faith to surrender to a single seeker, that was the tipping point for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's true for you, right?
Absolutely. And I also think it's because we're afraid that if we say no, we're saying no forever.
Yeah,
Right? So
that's a good point.
if I pick you, I'm telling everybody else in the world that they're shunned and that I'm never going to help them ever again. And it's not what it's about.
Shunned.
Yeah.
Shun.
Exactly.
Unshun. Reshun. That's an office reference if you're not familiar with The Office.
Yeah.
That's a really good point, because the fact that we are so driven to serve, then if we think that we're choosing to not help people, we're not going to want to do that.
And that's what you just said. We don't think that we're picking a person. We think we're not picking people.
We're rejecting the others.
Yeah, and that doesn't feel good at all.
So the reality is that we're not filtering people out. We're just putting people in line. Mm-hmm. And like, if you imagine 5 people in like sitting in a line or standing in a line, and they're all like lined up sideways, kind of shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
And if we think about which one of these people am I going to pick and which 4 am I going to reject, then there's going to be that resistance. But now if you just imagine that we put those people in line behind one another. Mm-hmm. So now you're not picking somebody forever, you're just picking somebody first.
Right.
And a key point that I want to hit on is that my first seeker wasn't the one that I ended up doing any business with. I actually didn't make a single dollar off that first seeker.
Right.
This is actually really cool. I don't think I've put this in this visual analogy, but behind the athlete was the Mary Kay lady. Mm-hmm. And had I not spoken to him, I would have never seen her.
Yeah.
And she, from a business standpoint,
that's right,
literally had millions of dollars for our company. So the most important seeker, though, was the one I made no money on.
That's right.
Because he led me to her.
And there were people behind her, too.
A ton of people behind her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can feel that in my body.
Same here. I honestly want to start crying.
Yeah.
It's what I think about with the hose. This is my hose. It's like double fisted.
Yeah, that's not
it's
at all. It looks. That's more like a machine gun, and I've seen you point those at me before, and it's never been a hose. This is a good Craig reference, right? The machine guns.
Used your sound and you had your fingers or a stick. That was you? That was yours?
I guess that's what just came out of
What's that? That was like a cat purring. I'm sure they were afraid of you.
That's tough right there.
Yeah, kitty. Would you have a fur ball? That was the worst. You better not edit that out.
The force of the hose when it's in that stream, it's enough to knock somebody down. And that's what happened, right? You hit the athlete and knocked him over so that you could hit the Mary Kay lady and knocked her down so that you could do what you're doing now, right? With the coaches. It's that force. Yeah. Not $1.
Not a single dollar. Wow. I mean, I paid thousands.
Yeah.
And it's not the dollars that most people are not willing to lose, I don't think. It's the emotion It's the ego,
Time.
time wasting, being wrong. And one of the hardest lessons to really get across to people is that the things that you're afraid of doing wrong are the required steps to a life that you can't currently fathom. Like when I was out there trying to help these athletes, I wasn't trying to make $300,000.
Right.
I wouldn't have even been able to put that in my brain, that it was possible.
Yeah.
I had never seen that kind of money. My parents certainly didn't make a bunch of money. I was a probation officer and a school teacher before.
Right.
I wasn't used to any of that. But it showed up only through action. And if we rewind the tape a little bit, you know, the very first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to be a motivational magician for high school students. That was my seeker in the very beginning. And I spent so many hours designing a presentation, searching for magic tricks. It was actually really good. You saw a little magic routine a little while ago where I designed all of these magic tricks that had real life lessons or motivation in some way that could fit in. And I wanted it to really inspire a lot of high school athletes or high school students at first. And I ended up doing a presentation for a single high school, although I didn't do the magic with them because it had just evolved. Like the second step was P3 motivation is what it was. I found that not too long ago, and it was really cool to see this. I totally forgot about it. And I don't even remember what the P's were right now. I remember pizzazz was the third one.
Nice.
Might have been, it was probably perseverance, something, and then pizzazz, right? And that was like, yeah, you got to bring your pizzazz. And I taught it at a school. And that didn't really lead anything in that one particular path, but it led somebody's dad wanted me to come speak to a group of business owners. And then they wanted me to come speak to somebody else. And then the message evolved. So even before that seeker of the high school athlete, how to maximize your athletic ability, there were several before that. And the only way you could get to the second one was to recognize that this isn't your one.
Right.
And I think that's a huge mistake that people make. And one of the most powerful lessons you can learn as an entrepreneur, that when you lock on to something, sometimes the absolute best thing that can happen to you is to spend months realizing this ain't it.
Right.
But what's to the immediate right or to the immediate left?
Yeah.
And what's in my head right now is you got to go to the end of the hallway in order to see the opportunities to your left and right.
Right.
But if you stay at the front of the hallway, you can't see the hallway at the very end that breaks off to the right, that breaks off to the left, meaning we can't even see the opportunities that are waiting for us until we travel the length of the hallway.
Right.
And so often what's waiting for us in that hallway is not anything like what we expected. But this requires faith. And in my journey, I'm glad you brought me back there. In my journey, you know, if the motivational magic was the first hallway, and then the P3 motivation was the second, and then the business owners was the third, and then I forget even what it was. I spoke to a women's of worth group, and that was the fourth, and then that was the fifth. That athlete was probably the seventh or eighth hallway. And then Mary Kay was the ninth.
Yeah.
And literally, there were millions of dollars waiting for me in that ninth hallway. But I didn't deserve it until I traveled the first 8.
Yeah.
And I fully believe that our purpose, to some degree, and our biggest opportunity, to some degree, is waiting for us to earn it before it shows up.
Yeah.
but so many of us won't get in motion until it shows up.
Well, yeah, because they're sitting outside of the building in their car trying to predict the 9th hallway and what's going to be down there. You said recently, right, you're like, follow your passion and your purpose will find you. And in each of those moments, that's what you were doing. And you just gave yourself, the way I hear it, permission for your passion to evolve and to pivot.
Yeah, and the key word there in this context is follow your passion. Don't think about it. Follow it. You got to get in motion.
Absolutely.
Your purpose won't find you unless you are in motion. And from a business standpoint, your seeker won't find you unless you are in motion. And very few people actually end up with a seeker that they start with.
You told myself and a group of coaches that you hope we didn't. Like that would be, I don't remember if you said bad or wrong, but that, like, you've got to get in motion and get going. And almost, I think you might have said wrong, because it was like giving us permission to get in motion, knowing that this was going to be a draft.
I think I probably said something like, if you get it right in the beginning, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Because your message will evolve.
Right.
And when you get into motion, opportunities will attract themselves to you.
Right.
And what's waiting in those hallways, what's waiting behind the seekers that are lined up in a row so you can't see who's behind everybody, is only going to show themselves when you're in motion. And so many of us are like, yeah, I'll come to you if you come all the way to me first, right? Like, I'll totally commit to you if you show up at my doorstep. That's not how it works. So this willingness to get in motion when you don't know is so critical for people to build a business, especially when they're at the earlier phases of their journey. And this is a little bit of kind of an oxymoron. Like, you got to be willing to be specific with your seeker so your seeker can change.
Yeah.
So the other one that's not on that paper will actually find you.
Right.
And again, the idea is to get enough clarity to get in motion, not to get it right.
Exactly.
And what I would say to any of you out there who are struggling to do the work that you know you should be doing, you feel yourself sabotaging, you feel procrastination, any of that, it's probably not. The answer is probably not what you think it is. The answer is probably this. The answer is probably that you haven't gotten clear enough on the person that you can't not answer the questions of. Because when you land there, try to stop.
Yeah, you step forward
Try to stop me.
in boldness.
Exactly.
I don't even need your permission, just like that woman. Yeah.
So there's a lot of the specifics to this conversation that we've alluded to. And we have an entire seeker training for you that will give you the exercises that we talked about, even walk you through some of the things that we opened up, but at a deeper level to pace you through the exercise and what to do with it next, and actually how to start to attract some of the people that you are really wanting to attract. So we'll put a card up there, or we'll put a link in the description of the video. And again, like, prove us wrong. Prove us wrong that level of clarity doesn't actually help you get in motion compared to staying in the vague overwhelm of, I can help everybody.
Yeah.
Now, if you like this video, check out that video where I break down step by step how to make $45,000 a year or more as a coach. It's all garbage if they're telling you that all you have to do is plug into a system that's going to work for everybody. In a coaching industry where you're coaching humans and you're a human,